Classic Country Kicks 101.5. Ooh, it's a long walk.
You made
Yeah.
it.
So that's just one of me. And so I have to make the music start in one room and come in here and talk in another room. So good morning. It is time for the Sunspot during the Sunrise Over Selma morning show. And joining me now, Miss Cindy Fisher. Hey, Cindy.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Actually, doing even better on our fourth week of doing this show. I
Yeah.
feel like as I've listened back to some, I sound so tired and, uh, and homeschooling the kids and this quarantine is so new. It is just, I feel better this fourth week. And now
Good.
that I feel like my fourth grader did her work by herself yesterday,
It's
which
always an
is the
accomplishment, isn't
shock. Yes. So
it?
we're getting somewhere. And I do feel like um, I'm starting to see the silver lining behind being at
Right.
home and cooking meals each night. And it's slowed down our lives and our pace, especially because we moved here from Birmingham. So we had nothing but hustle bustle all the time. So this,
Yeah. And then you
I
moved
think
here in
that we
what?
are
Was it
a
like
month, 5 weeks ago, maybe.
yeah, and then all of a sudden you got all this going on.
And
So
now we're quarantined from everyone.
right,
Luckily, we're in a river house, so there could be worse places to be
yeah,
quarantined.
yeah, like my
Um,
house.
oh, the
No, I'm
beauty
just kidding.
of Selma and Dallas County is just incredible. We talk about it, and people may, I don't know, not notice it as much because you live here, but
Right.
we think Dallas County is one of the most beautiful counties in Alabama for sure,
Oh, it
and
is.
maybe in the country. We're not sure, but we just love it, and we've just found our home now.
Well, it is one of the most beautiful places. It's one of the most historic places, the Black Belt area, and it's just there's so many things going for this area, so many positives, and I think you're right. When you live in an area for a while, especially, you start to take those things for granted, and we got to not do that. We got to not do
Well,
that.
this is giving us a chance to silver lining this. We can either glass half full or glass half empty,
Yeah.
and this is our chance to think positively.
Well, and I am positive that there's new people listening who may not know who you are, Cindy. Would you introduce yourself and let's let everybody know who you are?
Well, I am publisher and owner of the Selma Sun, which is a weekly newspaper here in Selma, Dallas County. We come out on Thursdays, and so we just put together our this week's paper yesterday, and it's getting printed this morning at 8. So we can talk about a lot of the stories that will be coming out tomorrow, but the Selma Sun, we offer legal notices now. We've been in the community about 4 years, so and big on our social media, and we're kicking up our videos, and now we're on the radio. So we are all in here in Selma and Dallas County.
And there's been a lot of good coverage on the COVID situation around here, and that's what we're doing here on the Sunspot is talking about that kind of stuff. So, um, anything new that you said you had a list of some things that we had been talking about that you wanted to go over? By the way, I read some new stuff this morning. There was a drug, the hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine that they've been using to fight the virus, and there were all these naysayers, and there was a couple of stories about people who have heart conditions taking this drug makes those heart conditions worse. So that's one thing that they've discovered that if you have a heart condition, that it's not a good idea to take these medications. They've been in use for years, and
Hmm.
they kind of knew that, but apparently in the doses they're giving for the COVID as opposed to the doses they would give for the malaria, it is
Right.
a little more of a problem. So, but that's the only negative that I've seen here lately as far as
Well, and
drugs
there's
go.
some plasma tests that have worked on
Right.
several that actually are maybe not 65, but a little younger that is working for them, which is really promising.
Yeah.
But the stimulus check is supposed to be coming into uh, checking accounts today, tomorrow, and
Right.
the next 2 weeks. I'm really curious to see how it's going to be used. I think that, like many people are saying, well, I think I'm getting 1,700 because I claim one kid of the two. Um, I don't think that's not going to pay one mortgage.
Right.
uh, Not that I'm not appreciative of it, but I hope that it's enough to really get anybody anywhere. You
Yeah.
know, we have decisions that are made in families about where your very little money is going to go. You're going to have some deciding whether your medication is going to be taken daily anymore. There's the food factor, which we've talked on this show with both superintendents for the schools here, public schools here, about the food program still running.
Right.
The Edmondites, they're still running
Right.
because it's still important in a community like ours that has the lower income population to be able to feed them. That's where kids used to get their best meal at school in many areas.
And still
So
a
they're
lot still
still
do.
doing that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and they're finding ways through the parent university bus that Selma City Schools has to be dropping and taking them to the kids in the community. I think it's great. Another thing, kind of going into the Selma City schools and the challenges that the urban school, I guess it's urban, districts have, is making the copies of their homework available.
Oh.
And when Dixie and the food outlet have both agreed to have a stand there where they've
Oh.
got by the grades and the school's different copies, and so families can go by these grocery stores and get the copies instead of just the schools. I've seen some pictures on Facebook from the schools where they're ransacked. The people are looking, oh, I don't see mine, and they're throwing other classrooms out and making a mess of it. Well, the teachers can't come back while they're there looking because of the 6-foot thing to put it back together.
Right.
So maybe having these alternate locations to get the schoolwork. But I know if anybody is having as much of a problem, schooling their kids like I have, then yeah, I don't know how the kids are going to turn out for their grade next year. And I sure hope I'm not their teacher next year. I can't wait for the excitement to see who their teacher is going to be, because it's not going to be me.
I think there's going to be a whole new respect in families for teachers and what teachers do.
I'm going to be gift giving every week. This teacher's going to love me more than any teacher ever.
That's funny.
And they behave differently for us. I know you've got
Right.
homeschooled kids that appreciate it because they chose that path. My kids are social butterflies, and they like to be in the mix, and they're adjusting, but they really miss their friends.
Well, yeah, and with mine, actually, Donnie is the more the social butterfly, and it's been a little difficult for him because of that. So I understand to a point how that can be a big problem for a lot of kids, and hopefully
they actually had a really good psychiatrist that I saw on, like, Good Morning America, one of those, that was talking about being real about what you can get accomplished with these kids. I know the teachers don't want to hear this, but I want to come out of this with a good relationship with my kids.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
I don't want my kids to hate me because I'm having to be the homework Nazi, And so I think psychologically, we need to come out of this with just as strong a relationship, if not better, with our kids than we had before. I mean, they need us in the security. We don't need to be yelling at each other all day. That's what my first 2 weeks of schooling happened. That's what it was. I still argue with my 7th grader who just wants to fail rather than do the work.
And I think there's something about I understand that a little too well because, we've got Drew. And
Drew,
Drew
yeah.
is the sweetest child on earth. He
He
loves
is.
more than it. But boy, I tell you what, you talk about if he wants to be obstinate, he certainly can, and that is a challenge. And for parents who are not accustomed to homeschooling and who are just doing this for the first time, that could be a major challenge. Matter of fact, that's something we should look forward to doing for the next show is finding somebody who could talk to us a little
Yes.
bit better about that.
Let's do that next week for sure.
Yeah. See, they're great ideas live on the air. How's that? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, woohoo!
But yeah, that is a big challenge to schooling and how it's going to. You know, when I'm seeing on social media now all these senior pictures and people getting ready for graduation, which is not going to happen in its traditional form this year.
Oh, I feel so bad for the seniors this year, missing that camaraderie that you would get when you have senioritis together.
Yeah, it
it
is. Yeah,
it is that chance to wrap up, especially here in Selma where everybody's grown up together.
sure.
A
Yeah,
little different. I went to a school that I graduated with 550 people, so a little bigger, but down here they've been together since kindergarten or earlier,
a lot of them have. Yeah.
and I don't. Maybe that makes it easier, but I doubt it.
Well, that's
All
another
those
good
last
question. Yeah.
now Morgan got to squeeze in a prom
Wow.
before
Yeah.
this.
Because I know a lot
Um,
of people. I saw a thing on was it? No, it was on a news website. I think it was the Fox News website. A young lady had a porch prom with just her family, and
oh,
they decorated, and she dressed up, and her dad or brother one danced. You know, it was just a neat thing to give her some sort of a semblance of a senior
it's
prom
just not the
because
same. It's
yeah,
not the
no, it's
same.
not the
The
same, but
corsage
you know.
and the limo or whatever you're gonna do.
Let me be honest
Uh,
with you. I didn't even go to my prom because I just didn't want to.
my little sister didn't either, but I think she secretly regrets it.
Oh, really?
So I would say to everyone who says that, get a group of friends and just go for the
Yeah.
experience. Go for the experience. It's a tradition.
Well, that's true. Now, I tell you what I did enjoy, and that was the, throwing the hat up after we graduated and all
Yes,
that. And that's what I hate that the seniors this year are going to miss out on.
it's
You know?
crazy. But
Yeah.
the Selma Sun is planning to do a graduation edition this year. It'll be our first one for Selma. We've done it in our other market, but we are really, really adamant that we do it this year because they need it more than ever.
That's a
And
good
this would
point.
be it's a commemorating uh, section so that it'll have all the photos and a list of the graduates. We're going to hopefully the yearbook folks will help us put together some photos for them from the year
Oh, yeah.
so that we can, help them wrap up their year. The seniors in each sports is what we usually do, and that way, and they usually take those pictures earlier in the year, even though this is, and actually next week in the Selma Sun next week we're going to start talking to senior sports
Ah,
kids
okay.
about and juniors that will be seniors that are missing out on a lot of what they're usually doing right now, which would be
Right.
tennis, um, I believe golf, softball,
Yeah.
baseball, and a lot of the juniors. This is their year to get noticed for scholarships.
Yeah. I think we carried
So how does
one.
that work?
We had one or two baseball games. We had a few that were rained out. Then all of a sudden, this COVID-19
That's
started,
right.
and they were all
Right. My
canceled.
son made the junior varsity
All right.
when we just got here, and he sat in some games. We have pictures of him in the uniform, but he never got to play.
Well,
He still
maybe.
managed to get mud all over the white outfit, even though he didn't even play a game. And he's
Uh,
seventh grade, all right? Come on.
Sounds like Drew. Yeah, I understand that kind of. All
Don't
right.
put him in all white.
Our first guest today is going to be David McCormick from the Vaughn. Let's get him on the phone real quick
Yes, and
and see
I'm
what he's got going on.
looking forward to talking to David again. We talked a little bit yesterday. When we talked to him last week or the week before on our radio show, yeah, it's been 2 weeks, I think.
That's
It
right.
was a great, great look at what's going on inside, on the front lines. We're not New York.
Hello.
This is David McCormick. How are you?
Hey, this is Todd. We're live on the air with Cindy. How you doing this morning, Mr. David?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Hope you are also.
Oh, yeah, trying to stay healthy. How about yourself?
Yes, we are.
Well, and that's kind of what we wanted. We spoke to you about 2 weeks ago. We wanted to get kind of an update on what's going on at the Vaughn and what you've heard. I haven't seen today's numbers. I know the past couple of days we've been holding in Dallas County right about 14 known cases of COVID-19. Is that about where we are now?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So we're kind of holding steady right now. Are you seeing a leveling off maybe like they're talking about nationally?
You know, it's hard to tell, but I do see that we are not really being affected as much as we could be because I think most people are staying home. They're following the rules. They're kind of doing the distancing, washing their hands. So we've really not had that big surge that other communities have had. It's interesting. At our hospital, we've got 3 in there now that have COVID. No one has passed away, which is real good. They've all been able to come off the vents. We do have a COVID wing where we put the suspected cases while we're waiting for the 2 to 3 days to get the test back. But probably half our patients have come from Wilcox County.
Oh, really? I think Wilcox had something like 30 yesterday, I believe. They had a lot, a lot larger number than we did. Yeah,
they did. Yes, they did. And but luckily, all the folks are doing better. Our staff is working very hard. They're really committed to what they're doing. They're doing a good job. You know, we're just staying safe. Everybody's following the rules, and it's been pretty impressive.
That is so important. I know Mayor Melton was talking about how he's seen still some people within the city limits not following the rules well enough, but obviously, when you do, that's what happens. You don't get sick, and we don't have the problems that some of the more populated areas do.
You're exactly right. And I tell you, there are always going to be folks that don't follow the rules, but overall, I think the vast majority of the people in Dallas County are following the rules. It's been very impressive.
I hope so because, boy, you know, if the experts are correct and we have no one else to go by but them, then things are beginning to level off because nationally people are following the rules. Obviously, you have to start on the local level in order to make it a national situation. And as that happens, the COVID starts to dissipate and disappear. And, well, maybe not disappear completely, but we get healthy and stay healthy. So I'm hoping that's
Todd,
exactly what's going on. Yes, ma'am.
I actually did look up the dashboard, and our confirmed cases is at 17.
Is it 17 today? Oh, wow, okay. So we're up by 3, yeah. Okay. Wow.
But that's still not, like you said, Wilcox County, I believe, had a case in a nursing home. They're at 31 cases right now.
Right.
But they've only had 104 total tests. So the more we test, the more we know more people that have it.
And that's another good question, Mr. David. They've been experimenting and coming up with tests that take hours instead of days. Does it look like we'll be able to get any of those anytime soon, or is that still in the experimental stages?
We're going to get some. You know, the thing is, it is experimental, but people are going to be using them. The FDA has waived the rules on the amount of time that it takes and the volume of folks that you test on, but the tests are pretty accurate. They still have some false positives and false negatives, but overall they're good tests. They're not as good as the ones we're currently using. You know, they do take several days, but I think, you know, getting them out there, we should be having them in the next several weeks and getting those rapid turnarounds, certainly for our patients that come in that we can tell whether or not they have it. I think that's going to be good.
I mean,
what about for the health department? Do they have the faster ones that are where they're doing it in the parking lot?
No, what they're doing in the parking lot is taking a specimen, the sample, and then they send it off. We are actually working with the health department and taking specimens to them every day, and that's who we're using now. And it still takes about 2-3 days, but it's much faster than the 7 days and 10 days that it was at the beginning.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's actually increased that much just just since it started. That's amazing. What about the?
Well, I tell you,
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, everyone has really pulled together in this, the whole country. The different manufacturers. Initially, people were having some shortages of the personal protection equipment, the masks, gowns, and we've been fortunate now that we're in pretty good shape. We have to manage it. We don't waste it. But overall, we're in pretty good shape on all of our equipment, our ventilators. We've been able to borrow several ventilators from a hospital that's in our company up in Florence, and one down in Andalusia. So we're pretty good on all the equipment.
The chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine, there have been a lot of positive. There have been a few negative side effects with people who have heart conditions, but has that come to Dallas County, or is it going to come to Dallas County?
Yes, it has. In fact, our physicians, the FDA approved it, I think, last Wednesday, and our physicians immediately used it on the one patient that we had, and that patient is now off the ventilator.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And which one was that? Was that the malaria one?
Yes, that's the drug for malaria.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, good deal. I'm glad to know that. So, again, there's a silver lining right there. We know we have something that will help in the fight. And
that's correct.
Of course, a lot of stuff is still under development that hopefully, I pray that this will be over with before we even need the vaccines, or any other drugs. But the vaccines will obviously need that to protect us from getting it in the future.
That's correct. It'll be just like a flu vaccine. It'll probably be, added in with that flu vaccine. It'll cover, more strains, which is what this is, just a different strain.
Right. Fantastic. Is there anything I'm sorry,
what
Cindy,
kind of
go ahead.
age group are we looking at? Are most of the patients elderly, or are some middle-aged?
Most of them are elderly. The several that were middle-aged had several other conditions that kind of compromised their immune system. But most of them have been elderly, yes. And they were very, they were sick in other ways.
And that seems to be the trend, isn't it? That this really affects mostly the elderly, the young, or people who have seriously compromised immune systems.
Well,
that's correct.
But we have to, and I had to remind my 10-year-old yesterday that she's like, "Oh, I'm not going to get it. I'm a kid." But I had to remind her, well, you could be carrying it, and then your Nana gets it. And she has a hard time fighting it off.
Right.
So it is
exactly right.
all of us.
Yeah, I think that's the big message that we need to get out to, is that those of us who are not, who don't have conditions that would cause us to necessarily get sick from it, we can still carry it and pass it on to those who do have those conditions.
Right, but it's so
Exactly.
silent. That's what adds to the uncertainty for so many people.
Yeah,
you don't know if you're carrying it.
No, you don't. You won't know.
Well, that's why we still stay home if we can, and wash our hands and try to keep a little distance. If we do those things, we're going to get through this.
And once we get through it, I'm hoping that people kind of keep that personal hygiene going, because maybe we should have been doing that to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. At least for a short time, people will remember. But we have short-term memories.
Yeah, exactly.
I know.
That's
so
exactly right.
How is the staff doing, David?
Our staff is doing very well. Our staff is, they're committed to taking care of people, providing excellent health care, and we've been through other situations, not certainly like this, but we take care of a lot of very sick people. And the staff has really done an incredible job. Our ICU staff and ER staff are the ones that are really in the mix with the critical patients, and they've really stepped up. And we need them to be here. They're here. Their attitudes are positive. They're following all the rules. It's been very impressive to see.
Is there anything that I know? I helped bring some food in one time for the ER and ICU staff. Is there anything that the public can do? Like, can they bring cookies or provide a meal?
They certainly can. We love to eat, and a lot of people have. Hancock's brought some yesterday. We've got Subway's, Domino's Pizza. I don't want to miss somebody, but I'm sure I am. And a lot of people have made masks, which is really neat to see. The community's really gotten together on this. Even though it's a terrible situation, a lot of good, I think, is coming. And like I said, Todd, I think that in the future there are going to be some changes. We're going to be a little more cautious in who we let in the facility and how we manage things. So it's going to change the way not only healthcare, but I think a lot of things in our country are handled.
I believe you're correct. I believe you're very correct.
Interesting.
Well, David, I appreciate you spending more time with us. It's always fun to talk to you. You've got such a wonderful outlook on things, and you're just great personality and fantastic information. So thank you again for joining us on the Sunspot.
Well, thank you for all y'all do to keep the community informed and also to entertain us.
Hey,
I love listening to y'all.
Trying to make it fun.
Thank you.
Well,
yes, you're right. Hey, why not?
Yeah, there you go. We'll talk to you again soon. Then, how's that?
Okay, thank you so much. God bless y'all. Have a great day.
You too, David. Thank you.
Thank you.
I tell you what, David McCormick from the Vaughn Regional Medical Center is definitely a gift to the community, and does some wonderful stuff over at the hospital. So,
Yes,
good to have him
absolutely.
around. Good to have him around. You were talking earlier that about some of the things that we had been talking about over the past few weeks. Did you want to hit a couple of those real quick and give us some updates and talk about that, which is coming out in the paper, I believe, tomorrow?
Right. So we actually did something fun this week on the front page. We pulled together some interviews that we've had on the Sunspot segment, and so that everyone can see a little bit about what our folks are saying. And we've had some really amazing interviews and people on with the superintendent from Selma City Schools, from Dallas County Schools. We've had Dario Melton on, and we've had Terry Sewell last week, which was great. So it's and Cheryl Stewart, or Cheryl Smedley, who is one of my friends with the chamber, and she talks a lot about the business aspect. So, and also David McCormick from last time. So you've got to check that out. These are little sound bites from what they've said with us in the past, and now we've got some new information we can provide in the future. But we also are looking at, and this is a Todd Prater exclusive. That about the food bank and expanding to Craig Field. And I've actually passed by Jeff Harrison a few times on equipment, moving stuff around and getting this warehouse that was donated to them set up for this next venture where they're moving from, is it Oak Street?
Correct. And
I've been to that facility. And this one will definitely have more room for refrigerated and frozen items.
Right. I can't wait. He's going to have a grand opening when he does get it opened out there, and it'll be interesting to see and see the place. And that's one of the things in the story. A lot of people wonder what's the difference in a food bank and a food pantry. We'll talk about that, and also, how has this COVID-19 situation changed the way they do business? And he says, there has been a little bit of an uptick in the amount of business, but the way they do business has become more streamlined. And that was really interesting to find out and learn about, too. So
that is. And maybe sometimes when you're moving, and I just moved, it's an opportunity to rethink how you do processes. Point. And, people say there could be another pandemic. It may be another strain of something like this. Maybe this will open our eyes into ways to be a little more cautious.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we get lazy. We get lazy on our hand washing and sanitizers.
Sure. And
not anymore.
I saw, I know what it was. We're going to talk to John Merrill in just a little while. But he was talking about, I had an interview with him yesterday, and I recorded it, and I'm going to play it in a little while, but he was talking about how, this was outside of the interview, some of the officials in the state, they had talked about doing, being prepared for a pandemic like this and making laws so that certain things could happen during a pandemic. And people said, well, that would never happen. It would never come to that. It would never get that serious. And then all of a sudden it did. So I think that there's a lot of people who are going to start thinking, well, you know what? There's an old saying that says never say never. And there's a reason why that old saying is still around. Because it doesn't matter what the probability of something is, it's always a possibility. And I think we need to take those.
I will say, though, that if you go back and look at movies, I know this is silly, there's a pandemic movie, the one with Dustin Hoffman from the 90s that I think about, where it was an outbreak. Oh, Outbreak. I think that was the name of it.
I think that is the name of it.
Yeah. And where you look at it like, it's kind of like The Stand, which is Stephen King.
Yeah,
it makes you look at it like Pet Sematary. Could that happen?
Ooh, yeah.
You know?
Well, it's funny.
You go, maybe they were right about some things, even if it was fiction.
Exactly, and that that's what their job is to imagine things that we don't normally imagine. And sometimes those things will come true, so we should be prepared for those things. And we need to take
maybe
these
not
precautions.
the Pet Cemetery one. Maybe
maybe not that one. Really, maybe not that one. That one.
But I do, The Walking Dead. I refer to it a lot in this because the early episodes where people are like, "What in the world?" They're learning that you have to get them in the head in order for them to die fully. Yeah. And of course, I think about apocalyptic type of things sometimes, and I think, who would I want on my team? If I were in an apocalypse, my seventh grader would not survive, and I tell him that sometimes. I'm like, in a zombie apocalypse, you are too lazy. But now my boyfriend he can camp, he can kill things. What a lot of people in Dallas County can do.
Yeah. That's why I keep telling my family.
Like, I made the best choice for who I'm going to end up with.
Well, that's a good point. That's why I keep saying.
And we don't get mad at each other real easy, so that's nice.
Well, and I've got 2 campers, so if anything happens, we will drive away from the problem and just live in our campers.
And you're used to being in it, so you have all the utensils.
Oh yeah, I lived in it for 4 months.
I'd have to pack everything, and I'd forget. I'm notorious for forgetting things.
But that brings up a good point that maybe, again, part of that being prepared is being prepared for situations like this where you have a stash of food that maybe you change out every so often, at least a week's worth of food or something in case you end up in a lockdown or something.
Or just the utensils. NPR had a segment with someone that was talking about these, I think they called them prepper books.
Yes.
So these are, the prepper books are the ones where they're very specific with what kind of knives they have and what kind and the purpose for each thing. And there's people they're into that, kind of like the comic
survivalists
or something. Yeah.
Survivalists.
So maybe I need to pick up one of those.
They're not looking so crazy anymore, it's like,
no, they're not.
Maybe there's something to it. But a couple of websites I wanted to throw out once again for information. We just spoke with David from the Vaughn Regional, his website, vaughnregional.com. There's a lot of good links and information to what's going on there. Altogether.org. Altogether.org is a statewide that's been set up by the state, by the governor, and it is links to just about every health place you can imagine, and any question you have, altogether.org will have a link there. Of course, there's cdc.gov, and then the Alabama Public Health, which I think is alabamapublichealth.gov.
Yeah, and the dashboard is kind of hard to find, I've found, but they have a link to it where I made it like a where I can just click on it automatically.
Yeah.
And you can see the number of cases in each county.
And there's one on I forget what it is now. I think it's MSN. I'm not a big fan of MSN, but they do have a good interactive map that updates every day that you can click on the different
So
counties.
hard to know which ones are.
Yeah.
Like this one says, the one with the Department of Public Health says 5 p.m. at the end of the day. That's why 17 popped up.
Yeah.
Because it was probably late yesterday.
Right.
Or even last night. It has a time.
That was probably more accurate than the one I've been looking at, because the one I look at, it updates daily. I haven't looked at it yet this morning, though, but
right.
They're probably pretty close. Selma-l.gov, also the Selma City website, has good information on things that are going on locally, so you might want to check that out too. And you know what? The parks.
Yes.
You got that story in there?
I do.
Okay, good, because there's 2 parks that are open, but they are stringently enforcing rules. That is Grist and Roland Cooper. But there's a lot of parks around the state that aren't right here in our backyard that are open, and you can find out about those at alaparks.com, alabamaforeverwild.com, and outdooralabama.com. And the reason I bring that up is I had a couple of folks literally just this past week say something about, I'm getting tired of being in the house and not being able to go anywhere. What can I do? Well, legally, you can go on outdoor excursions if you remain in groups smaller than 10 and maintain distance. If it's just in your family unit, you can go to the Alabama parks. State parks are still open.
And you can't go campsite to campsite.
No, they're not going to let you do that. You can't go visit with other people. You've got to stay in your campsite. Now, if your family is together in a group of less than 10 and you have to use 2 campsites, that's different. But you can't go to strangers' campsites and just hang out and say, hey, what's up, bro? So they are in there.
And I understand, because you did get a response from their spokesperson about, like, Old Cahaba, for instance, and why is a park like Old Cahaba closed? And some of it's about the policing system. They're park administrators, and that's not what they're not police officers.
Yeah, they're not
rangers.
Set up for that. Exactly, they're not set up for.
No, they're not set up to be kicking people out or county heads and saying that's too many.
Yeah.
And so I think limiting it to 2 parks where they can monitor there, but at the ones that are harder to manage, it probably is a good idea to take that off the shoulders of the administrators there.
Right, exactly. Now, I do know there's some good online and virtual stuff coming up in the near future with Cahaba, and some good video stuff.
They do such a good job on Facebook. You should follow it. If you're not listening and not on their Facebook, they do like in today's history. I think they did one yesterday.
I didn't see that one yet.
I find so fascinating.
Oh, me too.
So that I love history, and especially Old Cahaba's not that far from where I live. So I like to know what happened over here.
Yeah, well, it's not far from anywhere. Right? When it opens back up, if you haven't been there in a while, you need to go. I love that place. It's a great place to go. Let's move on to the next thing. I want to get to the elections, and that's what we spoke with Secretary of State John Merrill about. And I'm about to play that interview, and the reason why this is so important is because even though they have been moved until July 14th, there is still the possibility that this pandemic could still be going on, or even if it's over with, they're concerned about people who are afraid to get into the crowds quite yet. So let's listen to see what John Merrill, our Secretary of State, said about absentee voting and the upcoming runoff election. So here's John Merrill.
Some that had actually cast their absentee ballot. And so we wanted to make sure that those ballots were still going to count and they would still be a part of the process. So the Code of Alabama gives me, as the Secretary of State, the ability to establish emergency rules when necessary, an emergency rulemaking authority. So under 17-11-3, I was able to determine that we would extend the runoff period some 100 plus days. We want to make sure that your listeners know that if they'd like to vote absentee, because they're concerned about the coronavirus or they have other health concerns, they can download an absentee ballot application at alabamavotes.gov, alabamavotes.gov, or they can call the circuit clerk in their county and ask the circuit clerk to mail them an absentee ballot application. When they return it, they need to make sure they return a copy of their valid Alabama driver's license or their valid photo ID. And Todd, another thing that some people have questions about is, what box do I check, since Alabama is an absentee excuse state in this declared state of emergency? The one we want them to mark is the one that says, I'm ill or infirmed and will be unable to appear at my polling site on election day.
Repeat that, please. That's a very important thing to know.
Yes, sir, absolutely. The box that needs to be checked, and your application will be successfully processed if you check this box, is the one that says, I'm ill or infirmed and I will be unable to attend my polling site on election day. But they've got to make sure they include a copy of their valid Alabama driver's license or some other form of identification that's acceptable.
Right, a photo ID. Has to be a photo ID.
Sir.
Right. Now, the deadline for those absentee applications is when?
July the 9th is the last day to make successful application for the absentee ballot application. The last day to turn it in, Todd, is going to be Monday, July the 13th, if you do it in person. And the last day for it to be received by the circuit clerk or the absentee election manager, if it's someone different in their county, is July the 13th. So we want to make sure that all of our voters throughout the state know that we want them to get their ballot in. We may not see them at the polls in person, but through absentee, Todd, we'll see them at the poll.
Well, if somebody has not yet registered to vote, can they register and vote?
Oh, yes, my friend. They will have until June the 24th in order to register to vote for the runoff election.
Which is very important because that also has them registered for the general election November 3rd.
Yes, sir, my friend.
They need to go on and get on this now so that none of those days get wasted.
No doubt. Go ahead, be registered to vote, make successful application for the absentee ballot, and then return their ballot so their vote will be counted for the candidate of their choice.
And where do they get if they need to register to vote, where can they go to get the registration forms?
Todd, that's even easier, my friend. All they need to do is to go to our mobile app at alabamavotes.gov on the website, or at the mobile app at Vote for Alabama, and they can register on the phone if they already have a valid Alabama driver's license. Otherwise, they can download the paper form for voter registration and return it, and they will be successfully processed. They'll be added to the voter rolls.
Once again, if you would, Secretary Merrill, give the websites we need to go to register to vote and to get the absentee applications.
Yes, sir. To register to vote and to get the absentee ballot application, they can successfully visit alabamavotes.gov, or just to register to vote or to find your polling location, you can download the mobile app at Vote for Alabama from the App Store. That's for free, of course. And that way they'll be able to know where they need to go on Election Day, and they can register to vote at the same time.
Secretary Merrill, I appreciate you spending some time with us. That's some really great information. I wanted to tell the people what exactly the Secretary of State does in case there is some confusion or people don't really realize what you do.
Todd, that's a great question, my friend. The Office of the Secretary of State is the oldest office in the history of the state. Alabama had a Secretary of State before we were a state. In 1818, Henry Hitchcock was appointed by our fifth president, James Monroe, to serve as Alabama's first Secretary of State. Now, he served ably in that role in 1818 and 1819. But on December 14th, 1819, Alabama became the 22nd state admitted to the Union. Since that time, we've had 48 individuals who served as Alabama's 53 Secretaries of State, and I'm the 53rd Secretary of State. Our code and Constitution, Todd, they give more than 1,000 assigned duties and responsibilities to the person that holds this position, and those include, but are not limited to, elections, which includes election administration, voter registration, campaign finance reform, campaign finance review, all the things related to the elections process. Then business incorporations, licensing, trademarking. You start a new business, you have to go through our office before you can ever hire someone or pay 1 cent of tax. And last but not least, international adoptions. Now, we've concentrated on those areas because those, more than any others, directly impact the lives of Alabama families on a daily basis. And we want to be responsive, respectful, and accountable to the people of the great state of Alabama. If someone has a hard time reaching their circuit clerk, or they have a hard time following our story and what we tried to share today, Todd, tell them to call our office at 334-242-7200, 334-242-7200, or call me on my cell, 334-328-2787, 334-328-2787, and they'll get me personally, and I'll be happy to help them and we'll make sure their needs are met.
Thank you so much, Secretary Merrill. You're doing obviously an excellent job, and to put it out there that personal with those numbers, we realize that you really mean what you say, and thank you so much for what you do. And I appreciate you spending time with us.
You're very kind, my friend. Thank you, and call me anytime. Hopefully next time we'll be able to see y'all in the studio.
That'd be nice. Be very nice. The Honorable John Merrill, Secretary of State of Alabama. Thank you again. Great information for folks who want to vote in the upcoming runoff election. So thanks again to Secretary John Merrill for spending a little time with me. That's some important information. We need to know that, Cindy.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
and maybe we should be thinking about doing an absentee ballot at this point. I know that it's not the same, but it would be. I'm hoping that by July we'll all be able to go out to the polls like we usually do. Hopefully they'll make and continue talking about absentee ballots. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of people that won't vote.
That's what I'm afraid of, and I believe that's what Secretary Merrill is worried about, that people will not come to the polls because of the virus threat, and he's making it so that it is not a problem. You can literally vote from the comfort of your own home. You can either call the circuit clerk, and they will mail you the application for an absentee ballot, or you can go to alabamavotes.gov and get it. And again, he even said the App Store at Vote Alabama, I think what it said. So there's plenty of ways to do it.
We have to remind folks there are elections on there that are local.
Right,
yes,
exactly.
There's a presidential election that is on the ballot with the primaries and all of that.
Right.
But we've got Dallas County Commission seats that are in runoff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So it's important for folks to know that the ballot's going to be local. And also, the city of Selma is going to have its election in August. So while we see this process, there's going to be another one for mayor and for some council seats. So we just need to keep it top of mind that as voters, we determine who represents us. And that's what a democracy is. Let's not let the fear, make it where we aren't practicing as a democracy like we should be.
Yes, and the thing is, they're making it so that it is not going to be an issue if you have any concern whatsoever about the virus situation. So, and that's what Secretary Merrill is all about. He's trying to make sure everybody understands that if you are concerned, they have considered that and covered it
this way.
You can do it absentee, but the big thing too, he reiterated, and he said a couple times to check that box. I'm ill or infirm, and will not be able to be at my polling place. And the Alabama driver's license. By the way, he did say a copy. Don't mess up and put your driver's license in the envelope.
Oh man!
Just a copy of your driver's license or
right.
a legal and valid photo identification. And those are the only two major requirements. Then you can vote absentee and get your voice heard, and we the process will go.
And it'll all depend on our psychology at the time. How do
Sure.
we feel in July about, if we've already started going to um, some events and starting to feel more comfortable, we may have a turnaround and people may feel fine about going to the polls. It all depends on how we recover and how quickly before that July 14th date.
Right. And that's another thing too, the July 14th date. If you notice, like in any election, the absentee ballots have to be in the day before the actual voting day. So the deadline to either mail it in or to take it in person is July 13th. But you need to go on and start now if that's the way you plan to vote. And
Right.
and get that absentee ballot application in. And that, I believe he said, was the 9th, July 9th was the deadline. So the point I'm getting at is if you wait a little while to see how this virus pans out, that's fine. But don't wait too long if you have any reservations about voting at the polling place, because you may miss your turn or miss your opportunity to get the absentee ballot. And then if you don't feel like going to the poll, then you just missed your opportunity to vote altogether. So
Right.
these kinds of things you want to keep your ears and eyes open, but you don't want to wait too late.
Right.
So there we go. What do we got coming up in the paper? We've got the
Well, we actually have an education section this week
good.
and sports, so one of the challenges as a newspaper is that we are usually covering a lot of things right now. You and me, Fred Guarino, we've got Ronald Lane that works with us too in sports, are usually stretched pretty thin right now trying to cover all the different spring sports, the graduation activities and community events. We don't have anything to cover right now, right?
I know.
So making sure that we fill the paper with some stuff, maybe things that aren't downers like the COVID. We've looked for some things like that. One of the things, and Fred Guarino is wonderful about covering education. So, and he has two great stories with us this week for Morgan Academy, and one of them, and I thought this was real creative, and it's his wife Cam Guarino is the art teacher.
Right.
And she has done the art show online this year.
Oh, wow.
Since they couldn't do it in person where everybody gets to see the hard work that the kids have done all year and the ribbons with each one that won. So they did an online art show. We've got a story in print and online at selmasun.com that shows the overall winners, and it's neat because there's mixed media in there, and there's portraits, black and white and color. So I think that was kind of a fun way to do an art show for the kids where they could share the link and more people could see it. So that is on our education page. And we also have breaking news from last week about the Morgan Academy naming their new athletic director and football coach. So, Josh Thacker, that's been with them for 4 years, had announced that he's leaving to go to a public high school in Prattville.
Right.
And so they actually got a call from this person that they hired, Danny Raines. He is retired from public schools. And has done quite a few smaller, similar to the setup of Morgan.
Oh, wow.
And he's got a history of bringing smaller schools up from a 2 or 3 to 10 record of losses to wins to actually having a winning season within the first year or two.
Well, that's
to
good.
Where they make playoffs and everything. So there's a interview with him on the sports page this week that comes out tomorrow, Thursday, which is really a good insight into what his background is and what he's bringing to Morgan Academy. I personally have a stake in this because my seventh grader, even though I'm tiny, my seventh grader is humongous and has already been asked if he wants to play football at Morgan. So,
Good deal.
you know, this
Good.
this could be the coach that he will be working with JV in the fall.
I hated to see Josh Stacker go because he was a really nice guy, he's a great guy, and he actually brought the team up to where they were making playoffs and doing well. To know that this new guy can do the same thing, pick up where Thacker left off, that means that there's some really good things for Morgan's football in the future. So we'll be looking forward to broadcasting that this coming year.
Yes, on your channels.
Yeah,
I
we
think
have that
too.
on.
Another super important thing to me as a parent of a kid in sports is that it's another. Josh, Coach Thacker was great with the kids and motivating, having standards, and I think that's important for coaches is to be a role model with the kids that they work with. And I hear that Coach Raines is really good with that. That is something he is known for, and we'll be bringing that to the Morgan team. That is another plus as a parent, especially because I like the idea of having someone that is a good role model for my kid that probably will have a hard time with two-a-days. I'm mentioning back to the he won't make the apocalypse. We're going to hope he makes two-a-days.
Well, I'm sure he'll do fine. I'm sure. Once we get through this, we get back to normal, it'll be all fine. Well, that's going to be it for this edition of the Sun Spy. We'll have to look forward to next week.
And if you have suggestions out there of who we should interview and invite on, let us know. You can email me at publisher@selmasun.com, and we will start increasing who we talk to and getting out in the community.
Fantastic. That sounds like it's going to be another fun one, so we'll see y'all again next week. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.